Hey there, I'm Sharon Welch, and welcome to A Brave Journey, the podcast to help you throw out those legacy belief and identity stories that you've been lugging around on autopilot for decades, so you can jump back in the driver's seat of your aliveness again. When you change your mind, you change your life. Are you ready? Let's get into it. It'll be fun. When I was getting ready for my chat with Christine Lozada for this podcast, I just knew this was going to be one of those stories that we all need to hear from time to time as we navigate our own journeys, trying to find that authenticity and that alignment in our lives. Christine's story is so much like all of us, where she started on a path in adulthood following all of the shoulds that were given to her by her parents and her community and the media, and followed that path along. And on the outside, it looked like winning. And on the inside, at some point, it just didn't feel aligned. And so she took steps to completely reinvent, set down all of the shoulds, and really manifest that person that she was meant to be. And she did that with such a joyous splash. You will immediately feel her energy. And, Christine and I have had a number of conversations about these topics. And I think one that we agree on is the ability to be vulnerable and to share your story so that we can all see that we all go through these things. We are not special, which also means we're not alone. And so I really hope that you enjoy this chat that I have with Christine Lozada. You're going to want to connect with her. Check out the notes that are along with this podcast so that you can connect with her. And I think if you take nothing else away from what you hear, it's that you just have to take the next step. Her podcast, Everyday Badassery, talks about just being 1% more badass every day. And that's something we can all do. So I hope you enjoy it.
I am very happy today to be here with Christine Lozada. As I mentioned, she is an award-winning travel creator, a drone pilot. She has a podcast called Everyday Badassery, and she's living in this place that we all sort of dream about being. And I want to kind of hear how she got there because she started like a lot of us. So Christine, thank you so much for having this chat with me. So happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited for this.
So tell me a little bit about where you were when you started planning, like we all do, that adult life that you were going to have. What does that even look like for you?
The adult life that I started to come into was exactly the one I was told I should be doing. Because my options for me as a child were to be a doctor or an engineer or a doctor or an engineer from my parents. And there was really nothing else. My dad was willing to accept businesswoman, whatever that meant. And so I followed all the rules. I did all the things I should. And after growing up in San Diego to my immigrant parents who raised me, I went off to Berkeley and I studied economics and I joined the business world. And my adult life started in a very, very traditional way. And it honestly took me being an adult for a very long time. It wasn't until later, like in my 30s, that I started to realize that, this adult life kind of sucks and is not all the things everyone said it would be. And it didn't feel like I was growing up into the woman that I was just dying to become. But it
Yeah.
took me a long time to start to realize that.
What did it look like when that started to creep in for you? Was it like some big bang moments, or were there just things that started to happen that gave you a clue that maybe you should start questioning it? What did that feel like and what did that look like?
Yeah. I think one of the hardest things is, especially when you're doing all of the things that everyone tells you should be doing, it's hard to listen and understand that maybe this isn't right. And a couple of signals were happening for me. One was I literally was checking off all the boxes that my parents like expected of me. I graduated from school early. Like I went straight to working for Walmart.com. I was accelerating in my career faster than anyone my age. Like I was moving up very fast in the corporate ladder. And like those were all pats on the back. But the signals that I started to feel were things like
the faster I moved up and the more responsibility I had, the more work that I had, and
Yeah.
the less fulfilling it felt. Or another signal was, wow, like now I'm living in these cities of San Francisco, New York City, paying these huge amounts in rent or later in mortgage. And it was all of my time spent in my four cubicle walls and never enjoying myself in the city. But when I would have a chance to enjoy myself in the city, it was like this toxic, oh, I spent all day working, like, oh, I need a drink, versus like, I'd love to have a glass of really nice wine right now. Like it
Right.
was almost like this, you had to go out to be able to get over the amount of work you were doing at the work that you should be doing, because that's what everyone expected of you. And these little feelings of, wow, I work a lot and I don't enjoy myself, and when I do get a chance to enjoy myself in these amazing cities, it's almost like it's so over the top because I'm trying to overcompensate for how hard I'm working all the time.
Yeah.
And the more I moved up, the more work I got, and then the less satisfying it became. And I just felt like I was winning a game that I was simultaneously losing at all the time.
Yeah. Did you? I always felt like, I wonder if you felt this too, that like you're doing those things, you're like, oh, okay, well, this isn't what I thought. However, look at me winning at the big paycheck. Look at me winning at all the shiny things. So maybe there's something wrong with me. Like, you know what I mean? That's kind of how I remember that as well.
Exactly. Like I was
Yeah.
getting a huge pat on the shoulder from everybody. I looked amazing on paper. Like my
Yeah.
resume was fire. And if you like wrote down all the accomplishments, blah blah, like everyone was patting me on the back except myself. Like it just didn't feel good. Like I didn't feel good inside. But there was one other signal that happened around this time, which was, and it had kind of happened earlier than my 30s, which was I got tapped on the shoulder during a group fitness class in which the instructor came up to me and was like, I need to talk to you after class. And I was like, ooh, like I'm doing so badly. She needs to talk to me after class. And I almost ran out of class like before it was over to avoid the whole situation. Like, what does that say about my confidence at that point in my life? And afterwards, she's like, I've been watching you for weeks. I want you to become a group fitness instructor. That was like literally the last thing I expected out of her mouth. But what happened was I was simultaneously starting this career in the business world and simultaneously starting a career in fitness. And I did both for a very, and when I say I did both for a very long time, I'm talking about I did both for about 15 years.
Wow.
And what was interesting was these two lives were so wildly different.
Right.
I was buttoned up, like, skirt suit
Yeah.
with my
Skirt suit.
with my laptop suitcase. Skirt suit, Christine, at maybe around this time I was consulting for Saks Fifth Avenue when I was living in New York City. And then there was after work Christine that was like super hyped, helping people to reach their fitness goals, putting on these really fun, like zany, silly, awesome group fitness classes, primarily in cardio kickboxing. Cardio kickboxing meaning not like hardcore kickboxing, but like we're wearing like pink spandex and like
Right.
dancing around to dance music and hip hop and punching and stuff. And so I had these two very different lives that looked nothing like each other. And I was one person by day and another person by night, or another person by morning, depending if I had morning classes. And it was helping me to see that there's something wrong with my corporate life because how I felt in the gym was a totally different me, a more alive me, a more connected me, a more me. Whereas per our conversation, Sharon, in the email I sent you yesterday at 3:59 p.m. Eastern time, like it was just
Yeah.
like that me was just it felt more and more unnatural, but it took having this other version of me to be able to start seeing that as clearly as I was able to.
Well, at some point, there would have had to have been some action or moment of courage where, even though you were starting to realize that disconnect, it can be really scary then to even then give up or rethink or even look clearly at this corporate life that's not, this other part of you that's not working right. So what was it that finally allowed you to kind of move forward in courage and say, I'm gonna at least number one, look at it, and then number two, to fully leave it? What did that take?
Yeah, I would say there were three kind of milestones I hit. One was getting caught. So one one was I kept my fitness life so separate. I didn't tell people at work that I was doing that.
Ah,
And someone had said like, "Hey, like I was at the gym yesterday and I think I saw you teaching a class." And I verbatim said without any hesitation, that wasn't me.
oh,
I
wow.
just said it. It wasn't me because those two people were so different from each other that I was not willing to admit who I was outside of work in the workplace because there was a certain level of seriousness. And, I want you to take me seriously in the
Yeah,
workplace. And and saying that and admitting that, I was like, like that feels wrong. So
yeah,
that was one. The second one was I had started to make sacrifices around my corporate job to move towards a lifestyle that I wanted. And the first one was a very safe jump, but in my mind, it looked very risky, which was I loved my job. I loved my life. I loved everything about San Francisco, but I was dying to move to New York. And I was willing to take a chance on being able to try to go to another corporate job, Amazon, without being hired by them yet and just moving to New York because I wanted a different lifestyle and I wanted to try New York City in my 30s. And I was like, I'm just going to take that chance. And even though I went into another safety net of the corporate world, taking that kind of first risk started to unleash this possibility of, ooh, like this is really scary. I'm moving to New York City. I'm signing up for I think $3,600 a month rent with no job lined up. I think I'm going to land this. Like, but until then, like I'm just going to go. And I'm quitting something amazing. I was up for promotion. I lived with my best friend at the time. I had all my friends around me. But doing that was my signal for, hey, this was risky with a safety net. I was able to do it and I didn't need to hold on to 1000% control to be able to do that.
yeah.
And so that kind of unleashed that I can take risk. And then my last milestone was after I did Amazon eventually hired me. I wouldn't take no for an answer. It literally took around 27 interviews over the course of
Wow.
9 months for them to hire me. So this was Christine, fun employed, knocking on their door every day. Like I was not going to take no for an answer. Anyway, they hired me. Later, I realized, wow, this is absolutely not what I wanted. And I
Yeah,
wanted even more freedom in my lifestyle, which was my last safe but risky jump, which was leaving the e-commerce corporate world in which I knew it and trying to be a first remote employee back in
mm.
2013.
Oh,
I
wow.
was using Zoom all the time back then. And I was a remote employee for a company in Michigan. And it allowed me to start freeing up this lifestyle I was looking for. And so you can see, like, these are not crazy, huge jumps, but they're like almost like opening, like, who let the dogs out? Like it's starting to like
Yeah,
open the gate and
yeah.
like one dog will run through. Like it's starting to build my confidence over time. But those were three kind of like key milestones that started to open things up for me.
Yeah, and I think that that's a lot of times how it happens, where you make one different decision, and because of that, your perspective totally changes. You see something you wouldn't have seen otherwise. Oh, and also you realize you made a decision that even if it was somewhat of a safety net, had some risk to it, and you did not die. So you're like, oh, okay, I figured this out. What else can I do? And then it sort of snowballs, doesn't it?
The confidence snowballs. And
Yeah,
it really does, like in those moments, because obviously for us, we are the most important thing in the world, and the world revolves around us, and everything needs to go our way, and we must hold control. And like it's hard to see that, like it's okay. Like you're not the most important thing in the world. It's gonna work out. Like don't freak out about it. But each of these things and accomplishing each of these tiny things is one more check mark in the that gives me confidence.
Yeah.
lists. And the more of those checks you have, the easier it is to start doing bigger and more, or just more things, whether it's quantity or quality of the difficult thing. It just allows you to do more.
Yeah. What was the feedback or reaction you were getting from the people in your life at that time as they watched you do this? Like that's another hurdle, right? We have our own self-talk, but what were you getting from the outside?
Less, more, and more. That sounds weird, but my lesson learned was the less they know, the more I can accomplish.
Right.
And my mistakes in the beginning were keeping everyone, my family, my friends, super close because I really relied on their advice, their input. And it made me realize that the most advice and the most input I need comes from my own heart. It
Yeah.
comes from me. And I didn't say in my own brain because I oftentimes overthink things. It comes from my own heart. And so as I would keep people in the loop early, it would just confuse me because there's so many, everyone has an opinion. And they're
Yes.
not bad opinions. It's just based off of their life experience and what they think is best for you, which is not necessarily your life experience, nor necessarily what is best for you. And so I told people less information over time. Like when I left and went to New York with no job lined up, no parents knew about that. Like I was not, I mean, I was in my 30s, but I was not going to tell my parents about that. They would be worrying about me all the time, even in a nice way. Do we need to send you money? Do you need like, no, I'm fine. Like, uh, but it would throw me off of my confidence high horse if I had too many cooks in the kitchen telling me what I needed to do. So a
Yeah.
lot of the feedback I would get, I would get some encouragement here and there, but for the most part, are you sure? Are you sure that's the right choice for you? Are you Oh, but you had it so good. And just things that would make me second guess. So I tell people less and less, even now in life. I usually tell people after the fact and like well after the fact when I do
Yeah.
things.
Yeah. No, I get that. So then so to where you are now, what was that kind of next step to be fully out away from the safety net, so to speak? You experimented with the remote work. And so now you were fully ready to sort of create this authentic life for you. How did that come about?
A lot of people will just be like, yeah, YouTube is easy. You should just started a channel and started traveling and
Yeah,
money just started
sure.
raining from the sky. Because obviously, like that's how it works, right? And so it was always small steps. And in the same way, you've heard me make these jumps. They're not jumps without some kind of net. And so fast forward, Christine, as a remote employee, now I have the safety net of a corporate job while simultaneously being able to have freedom of place. I could
Yeah.
travel anywhere as long as I was back at their corporate headquarters in Michigan 1 week per month. So for 7 years, I did this. 1 week a month, I was in Michigan. And for the other 3 weeks, I was anywhere I wanted to be. And I
Wow.
had a home base at that time. I lived in New York City, and then halfway through that career, went and bought a condo in San Francisco. And so I had a base, but I would otherwise just travel. And that's what led to me starting my travel YouTube channel because people would ask me the same questions on repeat. And I was like, what a smart thing if I could just say it once and send them the link to it. And so that's what
Yeah.
started the channel. But going back to the like, how did you move into that? I created a runway. And so I was like, think, I think I want more travel. It's like I got a taste of it, right? I got a
Yeah.
taste of being able to be anywhere. And I'm like, I want more.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want this weight of my corporate job. And I want to do something else that allows me to travel even more freely than I am right now. Right. Like, you give them an inch and they'll take a mile. Like
Yeah.
already had the travel. I had $25,000 a year travel budget. On top of my corporate salary, they were giving me $25,000 to travel into Michigan and out of Michigan and stay in Michigan and all the things. And like I wanted even more than that. And so I created this runway where I was like, okay, if I were to keep traveling on my own, I started putting aside money that just allowed me to not have to work for a couple years and just figure out YouTube, whatever that meant. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to dive into it 100%, but I didn't want to have to manage a corporate job at the same time. And so I started creating this runway of what it would look like and what I would need financially to be able to test this out for a couple of years. And that's when the pandemic happened. Like
Oh,
my YouTube channel started for real January 2020. I was just
oh,
like,
wow.
oh geez.
Okay.
Oh, during that time. And during that time also, you know, travel was super restricted, but there's still ways you could travel. And at the same time, my company started having tons of layoffs,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave me an opportunity to leave with a severance package. And I was like, absolutely yes.
Done. Yep.
And that was my opportunity to just have the runway, way more than the runway than I needed to go try the things. And that's what kickstarted me into YouTube. I used the pandemic at a time that no one was traveling to test out a travel YouTube channel.
That sounds about yeah, that tracks. What I think is really important about everything that you've just said is I think a lot of times, I know I've fallen into this as well, where even when you decide to take the courageous path and make a decision that's more authentic for you or more aligned for you, sometimes you think, well, I made the decision. Now it must be like it's done. And what you're talking about is all of these decisions and all of this transformation. That's a period of years of you just deciding or refining your thought about something into something new and then working towards it. And it still takes the time that it's going to take. And sometimes, sure, maybe you get lucky and something hits and it's good. But a lot of times it's just doing the next thing you know how to do. And the next thing you know, it's 2 years later and you're like, oh, okay, so it did work out, even though it wasn't an instant thing.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's so important is a lot of times people say it's too late or it's too late to start or I
Yeah.
can't start now. And one of the things is first, it's never too late.
Yeah.
Everything takes time and nothing will ever happen on your timetable. Like these are all
No.
things I wanted a long time ago, but these are just things you're working toward all the time. And too often, even for me, the thing that held me back during all of this, the thing that held me back the most was myself. And it's because I oftentimes would think with too much finality in terms of what you're saying, which is if you make this decision, that's it. Like that is the thing, and there's nothing else. And
Yeah.
think about how we got anywhere in life. It's never from a point A to point B. It's
No.
always this journey, but the journey is required. You have to learn along the way. So many of the things I got right in life were a result of seeing and understanding that I was getting a lot of things wrong. And but I previously thought those wrong things were the right things. But I had to go through the journey to understand that. And nothing is final. It's never too late to start. And it's always long game. Anything I do now, I'm like, it's gotta come from passion first. Because anything I put my heart into is a long game. It's not gonna
Yeah.
happen tomorrow. It's not gonna, I would prefer it happen on Monday at noon Eastern, but it's not. It'll probably happen
That's
in like
not.
3 years.
Yeah, exactly. It's sort of like I think we get conditioned. I think of like the little videos that sometimes you'll see on social media where there's the guy, then he goes, "Chicken," and then he's got the shiny thing. I feel like that's what we're sort of expecting. But the journey is not sexy. It's like watching paint dry or a flower grow. Like if you were to watch it day after day, it looks like nothing is happening. But if you look back and do a time lapse, then what you see is just really how miraculous that journey really was. Yeah.
It's so true. But we also have to acknowledge that, especially now in this day and time, we are conditioned and trained to expect faster,
Yes.
expect more and faster. There are too many things that have happened over the last decade. I mean, you want to ride somewhere, boom, call an Uber. They'll be at your door to pick you up. Before it's like, I used to have to take the bus to the nightclub in San Francisco or like wait 20
Yeah.
minutes for a taxi. Amazon, like, right?
Yeah.
Boom. Like if it before when I used to work for Walmart and Amazon, it's like, oh, we hope it gets to you in 2 weeks. Like if it's not there tomorrow, you're like, I'm
Where
canceling
is
my
it?
order.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
Exactly.
there are just too many things, right?
Yeah.
social media and the way it connects us is amazing and beautiful and scary at the same time, but
Right.
we can connect instantly. Before it was like I would put a 30-cent stamp on a postcard and maybe you would get to my pen pal in Japan in like a month and a half. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like we just
No, totally.
expect faster
And it was
these
fine.
days.
Yeah. I know it.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
I love
we're
that.
conditioned to expect those things and think that way now. And it's just
Yeah.
like that's just not the way it is.
And so here you are now doing all of these amazing things. You are, in my mind, a prolific travel creator, and you just started doing group trips and you've got all of this other stuff that you're doing. Plus you're this amazing drone pilot. The things that you can see from your eye of the sky to me are just mind blowing. You have a podcast, all of these things. So what does that feel like where you are now? Where do you feel like, obviously I know you're never like, I have arrived, this is it. But what does it feel like to be where you are now? And what are the things that are niggling at you to continue evolving?
It's a great question. And when I first started creating in January 2020, it wasn't all of those things at first, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that has always been true to me is making sure I had that North Star, whatever it is. And for me, it all started from I wanted to travel more, and that's a selfish thing. But I also simultaneously, I wanted more people to start traveling more.
Yeah.
I wanted people to not just take the 14 days out of their year, from their corporate job to go travel. I wanted them to do more than that. And so always I wanted to inspire to travel and continue to travel myself. And
Yeah.
like all the things that you named are all things that support that North Star. And they're all things I've added along the way, right? Something like drones. A lot of people think drones are lucrative as hell. I will say that. But drones for me is a mode of travel. Like anytime you travel, like what do you want to do? You want to sit at the window seat, you want to go to
Yeah.
the rooftop bar, you want to hike to the tallest mountain. Why? So you can see the amazing view and enjoy the place that you're at. That's what drones and travel are for me. It's enjoying the place that I'm at. It just so happens there are these other things that you can do with it. And I am always keeping in mind because, and this was one of the challenges I see a lot of creators getting into, is it's always passion first. But for me, it's how can I turn those passions into profits? And when I think about it from that standpoint, I can keep growing the things I do, and it allows me to do more. And it
Yeah.
allows me to open more doors all the time. So, yes, drones help me travel, but drones are also super lucrative for me. But then I started, I wanted people to potentially leave the corporate world, see what
Hmm.
else is out there, understand the things that I have been able to see. That's what led to the podcast. That's what led to we need an in-person experience around this. Let's do a group trip together. And so you can see how like these things I'm starting
Yeah.
to build all come from the same North Star. And yet at the same time, ah, I want so much more. Like I just want so much more. And one of the things for me is I always keep this mindset of if something I created even 3 months ago, 6 months ago, if I don't look or listen to that and it doesn't make me cringe, it means I'm not learning enough. I'm
Okay.
constantly trying to improve my video, improve my tools, improve the way I do things. And so it makes me want more things. And I'm also keeping my eye out. I mean, we are in an amazing time of things changing.
Yeah.
We have AI, we have robots, we have the metaverse. We have so many things, VR, all like starting to become mainstream. What else is next? And I'm keeping my ear to the ground about what else it could be. But I'm always keeping true to that North Star of like helping people to see that what else there is there in the world beyond the four walls of your home or your cubicle or whatever it is. Go travel, go see things, go explore. But yeah, tip of the iceberg right now. I launched a lot of things and there's so much more coming. But I will also say I've learned my lesson
Mm.
in that I before used to have a humongous team, and now I
Yeah.
prefer to be like a single person running my business. It means I do less, but I do it well. Oh, but yeah, more to come. So
Yeah, I think a lot of people that's where we start, particularly if you're going to go the entrepreneurial path.
Mhm.
We think, oh, we have to have the team of these people because we don't know how to do these things. But that also adds to complexity with it, which at some point begins to feel a little corporate-ish at some point. So then you're like, oh yeah,
That's
maybe not
exactly
so
it.
much.
I
Yeah.
was starting to listen to the shoulds.
Yeah.
You should scale. You should have a team. You should grow faster. You should fill in the blank. And I was like,
Oh
why wouldn't I just go? The corporate world is 10,000 times easier than my
yeah.
job now.
Oh
It's
yeah.
so much easier. It is 10,000 times less fulfilling,
Yeah.
which is why I would rather do what I'm doing now. It's way more work. Does it feel like work? Like the exhaustion that I feel after a 15-hour day of doing things like this, podcasting,
Yep.
maybe editing later, filming some things, like sorting through footage, whatever it is, planning my next trip. A 15-hour day doing this feels like a 3-hour day in my corporate job. Actually,
Yeah.
it probably feels like a 30-minute meeting in my old corporate job.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, and I also love the idea, this concept of constantly evolving. That's a huge mantra for me as well, that if you're not evolving, then you get in a rut. And I think we are conditioned to believe that when you make a decision, that's a decision. And if you change your mind, then you're flaky or you're not responsible. When in fact, you've just become smarter about yourself and your world. So if you get new information and you change your mind. And so I think you clearly, as you've gone through, you've done things, you've made decisions, you got to some things, you're like, nope, not quite it, gonna change that, or well, that didn't work. And I think that's so powerful in being able to even move forward, is that idea of constantly evolving and being okay with changing your mind. I think that's
That's just it.
amazing.
The only constant in life is change.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
the faster that we can accept that things change, that we change.
Yeah.
That's something I recently announced, and when I want to go after something, I will announce it to the world. I announced to the world, I'm going to go pro. I'm going pro in pickleball. I'm going to become a professional pickleball
It's
player.
amazing.
I'm going to become a 5.5 player, blah, 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 all the things. And then I realized I don't want to do that for
Okay.
all the correct reasons,
Yeah.
which are not necessary to explain here. But then I was like, no. And it's like, oh no, but you gotta stay to your word. You announced that. Like you're gonna do this. And it's like, nah, man, like shit changed. It doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't make
Yeah.
financial sense. It doesn't make time sense. It doesn't fulfill the things that I originally set out to do. I basically had to choose between travel and pickleball. I'm choosing travel and drinking all day long over pickleball.
Yes.
Huh. But yeah, we change and then we got to be okay with that and just understand that change is part of it. It's
Yeah.
part of it.
Yeah. You just get comfortable with it.
Yeah, I
So
know,
what's the
right?
best way for people to connect with and interact with you now?
I am at Christine Lozada everywhere.
Awesome.
My primary platforms are YouTube and Instagram. Those are also the worst platforms to try to connect with me on. Actually, for your audience, I will definitely provide something I don't provide to anyone else. There's an email address I use, which is christinelozada@gmail.com. That is friends and family and close ones only. If you
Awesome.
message me there, I will respond, but that's the best way to find me.
That's fantastic. And I'll put all that in the notes so people know how to get a hold of you. So final thoughts. If you could, is there anything different that you would tell yourself in your 20s or 30s from where you are now that you wish you just could have heard that might have made the path feel maybe a little less confusing or scary?
Yes, I already know exactly what it is. There's the me back then was very close-minded, that I couldn't see all of the possibilities because a lot of the things and the opportunities and the projects I have found myself being able to do, flying a drone off of a yacht in the Maldives for a month, or scuba diving in Bonaire and making underwater content with some of the best creators in the world, or being asked by one of the top telecommunications companies to fly a drone in one of the most remote parts of the Colorado mountains, like fill in the blank with lots of wild things, being a mermaid, swimming with whale sharks in Mexico, like just crazy things. But that in my mind back then didn't make sense.
Yeah.
How would you make money off of that? How would that be a lifestyle? Why? Like, no, like the me back then, I don't even want to say close minded, but just had no idea what opportunities were available out there, and so didn't even think about that.
Right.
And a lot of times we don't dream big enough. And so if I could go back and talk to her with what I know now, I would tell her dream bigger, dream way bigger. That the things that feel so far flung, like, no, there's no way I'd be able to do that, are 100% available to you. It's just when you decide that, yes, you can do that, then you will do that. But as long as you wonder about it or don't even put it in your mind, it will never exist. And once you get out of your own way, realize that you're capable of literally anything that you want, but you gotta want it. Like, you gotta want it. Anything is possible. There isn't anything I have not achieved that I didn't want. But the key part is I needed to want it. If I wanted it, if I want it, I'll get it. No matter what. Like that Amazon example, I bring that into my everyday life and everything that I do. If I want it, I will get it. It's just that you need to know it exists, that it's possible, that you're capable of anything, and get out of your own way and then just go start the work, because on the other side of the work, oh, the reward is awesome.
Just past the fear lies the freedom, as they say. Absolutely.
That's
Oh, Christine, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation. I have always been so, from the moment I met you, if you have not had the opportunity to meet Christine in person, her energy is palpable. And so my experience of you has always been so inspirational. I just love watching what you're doing. And I know we think a lot the same way about those kind of evolutionary things, but even I've done a lot of work myself, but I'm just in awe of you. So I'm just so happy that other people get to hear your story too. And I just thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for listening to A Brave Journey. I'm so happy you were here. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to follow and leave a review, and share this with a friend who could benefit too. See you next time.